The metal door slid open with a soft hiss. Lisa Martinez stepped into the small white room, her recording device clutched tightly in her hand. 3 years of covering the war had taught her to expect the unexpected, but nothing could have prepared her for this moment. Across the table sat Commander Zexthul of the Catherian Empire. His silver scales caught the harsh overhead lights, creating patterns that shifted as he breathed. 4 arms rested on the metal surface, each hand bearing 3 long fingers that ended in sharp points. His head was larger than a human's, with dark eyes that seemed to see everything at once. Lisa had interviewed hundreds of people during her career as a war reporter, generals, soldiers, civilians who had lost everything. But she had never sat across from an alien before, the enemy, the creature whose people had been trying to wipe out humanity for 3 long years. "Commander Zexthul," she said, settling into her chair, "thank you for agreeing to this interview." The alien's translator device buzzed softly before his voice filled the room. It sounded strange, like words being formed by something that was not quite a throat. "You may call me Zex. Your human names are difficult for my people to pronounce, but I have learned some of them." Lisa nodded and activated her recorder. "The people of Earth want to know about the war, about what really happened out there. Will you tell us?" Zex shifted in his seat. His scales darkened slightly, which Lisa had learned was a sign of discomfort in his species. "I will tell you, but you must understand, human Lisa Martinez, that what I am about to say will not be easy for either of us to hear." The room fell silent, except for the hum of the space station's life support systems. Haven's Rest was neutral territory, one of the few places where humans and aliens could meet without shooting at each other. The war still raged across dozens of star systems, but here, in this small white room, there was only truth. 3 years ago, Zex began, my people discovered your species. We had been watching Earth for some time, studying your radio signals, learning about your civilization. The High Command was not impressed. He paused, his dark eyes focusing on something Lisa could not see. Humans appeared primitive to us. You had barely reached your own moon when we first noticed you. Your weapons were crude, your ships were slow, your technology was centuries behind ours. The war planners estimated it would take perhaps 6 months to conquer your entire species. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard rumors about how the aliens viewed humanity, but hearing it stated so plainly was different. What changed their minds? You did, Zex said simply. Your entire species. But I am getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about New Portland. The alien's scales rippled as he settled back in his chair. I was part of the 3rd Assault Fleet. My rank was Battle Commander, which in your terms would be similar to a colonel. We were given what seemed like a simple assignment. Capture the human colony on New Portland. Intelligence reported it was a farming world with perhaps 50,000 inhabitants, mostly civilians growing food and mining minerals. Lisa leaned forward. New Portland had been one of the first colonies to fall to the aliens, but the details of the battle had never been released to the public. What did you expect to find there? We expected them to surrender, Zex said, his voice growing quieter. This is how war works in the galaxy. When a superior force arrives, the inferior force yields. Terms are negotiated. Lives are spared. Planets change hands with minimal bloodshed. This is civilized warfare. He raised one of his 4 hands and stared at it. We sent the usual surrender demand. Our ships appeared in orbit around New Portland. We demonstrated our firepower by destroying a small asteroid near their planet. The message was clear. Submit or be destroyed. But they didn't surrender, Lisa said. It was not a question. No, Zex replied. They did something none of us expected. They laughed. Lisa blinked. They laughed? The human in charge of their defense forces, a man named Jake Morrison, responded to our surrender demand by broadcasting a message to our entire fleet, he said, and I remember his exact words because they confused us so much. Thanks for the warning, Ugly. This should be fun. The alien's scales darkened further. We did not understand what he meant by fun. War is not fun. War is serious. War is about achieving objectives with minimal loss of resources. But this human Morrison seemed genuinely excited about fighting us. Zek stood up and walked to the small window that looked out into space. Stars dotted the darkness, and somewhere, among them, the war continued. We began the assault as planned. Our plasma cannons targeted their main settlement. The buildings were destroyed in minutes. We waited for the surrender signal. It never came, Lisa said. It never came, Zex confirmed. Instead, the humans vanished. 50,000 people simply disappeared into the forests and mountains of their world. Our sensors could not find them. Our heat detectors showed nothing. It was as if they had learned to become invisible. The alien turned back to face her. This should have been impossible. Our technology is advanced. Our sensors can detect a single warm body from orbit. But somehow, these primitive humans had found ways to hide from us. Lisa made notes on her tablet. This was information the military would want to hear. What happened next? We sent ground forces to search for them, Zek said, returning to his seat. 3,000 of my best soldiers, equipped with energy shields and plasma rifles. They would sweep the planet sector by sector, until every human was found. His voice grew even quieter. Within the first day, we lost 200 soldiers. Lisa looked up from her notes. How? We still do not know exactly how, Zex admitted. The humans had turned their farming equipment into weapons. Tractors became mobile gun platforms. Irrigation systems became traps that could flood our soldiers in moments. Mining explosives were hidden everywhere. He paused, his breathing becoming more rapid. But it was not just the equipment, it was the humans themselves. They fought like nothing we had ever encountered. A farmer with a hunting rifle could somehow hit targets that our best marksmen would miss. Children, who should have been running, in terror were instead setting traps that caught trained soldiers. The humans were defending their home, Lisa said. Yes, Zek said, but it was more than that. They seemed to enjoy it. When our soldiers cornered a group of human miners instead of surrendering, the miners smiled and triggered explosives that destroyed themselves and my soldiers together. They were laughing as they died. The room fell silent again. Lisa tried to imagine the scene Zex was describing. Humans laughing as they died in battle. It was both inspiring and terrifying. This was when I began to understand that we had made a terrible mistake, Zex continued. We had assumed that humans were like other species we had conquered. We assumed you would choose life over death, safety over conflict, surrender over destruction. We were wrong about everything. Lisa set down her tablet. How long did the battle for New Portland last? 6 months, Zek said. 6 months of the most brutal fighting any of us had ever experienced. We lost 12,000 soldiers trying to capture 50,000 human civilians. And in the end, we never truly won. What do you mean? Zex's scales rippled again. We destroyed their cities. We burned their forests. We turned their beautiful world into a wasteland. But we never defeated them. Even as our ships left orbit, human survivors were crawling out of hidden bunkers, ready to rebuild and fight again. He looked directly at Lisa. That was when the High Command realized that this war would not be over in 6 months. This war might never be over, because we were not fighting ordinary creatures trying to survive. We were fighting humans. The interview had only just begun, but already Lisa could see the fear in the alien's dark eyes. Fear and something else, something that looked almost like respect. The metal door slid open with a soft hiss. Lisa Martinez stepped into the small white room, her recording device clutched tightly in her hand. 3 years of covering the war had taught her to expect the unexpected, but nothing could have prepared her for this moment. Across the table sat Commander Zex Thule of the Cytherian Empire. His silver scales caught the harsh overhead lights, creating patterns that shifted as he breathed. Forearms rested on the metal surface, each hand bearing 3 long fingers that ended in sharp points. His head was larger than a human's, with dark eyes that seemed to see everything at once. Lisa had interviewed hundreds of people during her career as a war reporter. Generals, soldiers, civilians who had lost everything. But she had never sat across from an alien before, the enemy, the creature whose people had been trying to wipe out humanity for 3 long years. "Commander Zexthul," she said, settling into her chair. "Thank you for agreeing to this interview." The alien's translator device buzzed softly before his voice filled the room. It sounded strange, like words being formed by something that was not quite a throat. "You may call me Zex. Your human names are difficult for my people to pronounce, but I have learned some of them." Lisa nodded and activated her recorder. "The people of Earth want to know about the war, about what really happened out there. Will you tell us?" Zex shifted in his seat. His scales darkened slightly, which Lisa had learned was a sign of discomfort in his species. "I will tell you, but you must understand, human Lisa Martinez, that what I am about to say will not." Lisa watched as Zex moved around the small room like a caged animal. His forearms gestured as he spoke, and his scales shifted from silver to darker shades as his emotions changed. She had been interviewing him for an hour now, and she could see that talking about the war was difficult for him. "After New Portland, everything changed," Zex said, stopping near the window again. The High Command had expected quick victories across all fronts. Instead, reports came in from every battle zone. The same story repeated over and over. Humans were not fighting like any species we had ever encountered. He turned back to Lisa. "On Kepler 7, a mining colony with only 3,000 people held off our 5th Fleet for 4 months. The humans had turned the entire asteroid into a fortress. They used mining lasers as weapons and created traps in every tunnel. When we finally broke through their defenses, we found that the humans had wired the entire asteroid with explosives." Lisa looked up from her notes. "They were going to destroy themselves rather than surrender?" "Worse," Zex said. "They were going to destroy themselves and take as many of us with them as possible. The human leader, a woman named Carol Hughes, sent us a message. She said that if we wanted the asteroid, we could have it, but we would have to pick up the pieces after it exploded." The rear alien sat back down, his breathing heavy. "This made no sense to us. Why would they destroy something valuable rather than let us take it? In our culture, when you lose a battle, you accept defeat and try to minimize further losses. But humans seem to prefer mutual destruction over surrender." Lisa made more notes. The stories Zex was telling matched rumors she had heard from military sources, but hearing them from an alien perspective made them even more incredible. "What did your forces do?" "We withdrew," Zex admitted. "For the first time in our military history, we chose not to press an attack because the enemy was too willing to die. Our commanders could not understand it. How do you fight an enemy that welcomes death?" He stood up again and began pacing. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was that the humans were getting better at fighting us. Every battle taught them something new about our tactics, our technology, our weaknesses, and they learned fast. Lisa had heard about human adaptability from her military contacts, but she wanted to hear it from the alien's perspective. "Can you give me an example?" "Jake Morrison," Zex said immediately. "The human from New Portland. After that battle, he began appearing on other worlds. Somehow he had escaped our blockade and was teaching other human colonies how to fight us." Zex's scales darkened to almost black. "Morrison became a legend among our troops. Not a good legend, a terrifying one. He would show up wherever we were attacking, and suddenly the humans would start using new tactics that we had never seen before." The alien stopped pacing and looked directly at Lisa. "On Harmony Station, Morrison convinced the humans to use their own water supply as a weapon. They flooded the entire station while we were inside, then used electrical systems to turn the water into a giant shocking device. We lost 800 soldiers in 10 minutes. Lisa tried to picture the scene. The humans were willing to destroy their own station? That was the point, Zex said. They were not trying to keep their territories. They were trying to make conquering those territories cost us more than we could afford. Morrison had figured out that humans could replace their losses faster than we could replace ours. He sat down again, his four hands clasped together. You see, human Lisa Martinez, your species reproduces much faster than ours. A human can be ready for battle at age 18. A Catherian needs 40 years to reach fighting age. Morrison understood that if he could kill enough of our soldiers, We would eventually run out of replacements. Lisa felt a chill. The idea that humans were using their own population growth as a weapon was both brilliant and terrifying. Is that why the war dragged on so long? Partly, Zek said. But there was something else, something that scared our commanders even more than Morrison's. Tactics. The humans were enjoying the war. Lisa looked up from her tablet. Enjoying it? Yes, Zek said. This was the most disturbing thing we discovered about your species. Most civilized races fight wars to achieve specific goals: territory, resources, political control. But humans seemed to fight wars because they liked fighting wars. He stood up and walked to the wall, pressing one hand against the metal surface. Our psychologists studied captured human soldiers. They found that many humans actually felt happier during combat than during peacetime. Fighting gave them a sense of purpose that they could not find in normal life. Lisa made notes furiously. This was information that could change how people understood the war. Are you saying humans are naturally violent? Not violent, Zek said carefully. Competitive. Humans seem to need challenges to overcome. When we attacked you, we accidentally gave your entire species the ultimate challenge. We made war into a game that humans desperately wanted to win. He turned back to her. Let me tell you about Amy Rodriguez. She was a cargo pilot before the war. No military training, no combat experience. Just a woman who flew supply ships between planets. Zek's scales shifted to a lighter shade, which Lisa had learned meant he was feeling something like admiration. When we attacked Luna Base, Rodriguez was the only pilot available to defend the station. She had a cargo ship and 3 mining robots. We had 12 attack fighters and a destroyer. Lisa waited for him to continue. Rodriguez used her cargo ship to ram our destroyer, Zek said. But before she did, she programmed the mining robots to attach themselves to our fighters. The robots were designed to cut through rock, but they cut through our ships just as easily. Rodriguez destroyed our entire attack wing by turning cargo equipment into weapons. He paused, his breathing becoming more rapid. But here is the part that still gives me nightmares. Rodriguez survived the ramming attack. When we found her in the wreckage, she was laughing. She was badly injured, probably dying, but she was laughing and asking if we wanted to try again. Lisa set down her tablet. What happened to her? She recovered, Zek said. And she became one of your most effective fighter pilots. By the end of the war, Rodriguez had destroyed more of our ships than any other single human. She painted little marks on her fighter for each kill, like she was keeping score in a game. The alien walked back to his chair but did not sit down. This is what our commanders could not understand. How do you defeat an enemy that treats war like entertainment? How do you negotiate with people who seem to prefer fighting to peace? Lisa thought about the question. Maybe because peace is boring. Zex stared at her. Boring? Peace is safe. Peace allows civilization to grow and prosper. Peace is the natural state of intelligent beings. Maybe not for humans, Lisa said softly. No, Zex agreed. Not for humans. This was the conclusion our military leaders reached after 2 years of fighting. Humans are not like other species. You are something new in the galaxy, something that evolution created specifically for war. He finally sat down, his 4 arms resting on the table. Do you know what your soldiers would do when they captured our equipment? Lisa shook her head. They would take it apart to see how it worked. Then they would try to build better versions. In the middle of battles, while explosions were happening around them, human engineers would be studying our weapons and trying to improve them. Zex's scales rippled with what looked like frustration. It took us months to realize that every piece of equipment you captured made you stronger. You were not just taking our tools. You were learning from them and making them better. Lisa made more notes. Is that how humans started winning battles? Humans started winning battles because you refused to accept that losing was possible, Zex said. Every defeat just made you more determined. Every loss taught you something new, and every victory made you more confident that you could win the next fight. The alien looked out the window at the stars. After 2 years, our casualties were mounting. Our soldiers were afraid to fight humans, and worst of all, Humans were beginning to attack our homeworlds. The war had turned completely around. He looked back at Lisa. That is when the High Command decided to end the war with one final battle, the attack on Earth's moon. Zek stood up and walked to the far corner of the room. His scales had turned almost black, and Lisa could see that talking about the next part of the story was going to be even harder for him. She waited patiently, knowing that pushing him would only make him shut down completely. The Battle of Luna, Zek said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. That was supposed to be the end of everything. The High Command assembled the largest fleet in our history, 300 ships including our most powerful dreadnoughts. The plan was simple: destroy the human moon base and force Earth to surrender. He turned back to Lisa, his dark eyes reflecting the overhead lights. Intelligence reports said that Luna base had maybe 50,000 defenders. We brought enough firepower to destroy a planet. The commanders were confident that this would be our final victory. Lisa leaned forward in her chair. The Battle of Luna had become legendary among humans, but the details were still classified. Getting the alien perspective on what happened there could change everything. What went wrong? Everything, Zek said, starting with Admiral Carol Stone. The alien's scales shifted slightly, showing a mix of fear and something that looked like respect. We had studied human military leaders for 2 years. Most of them were aggressive, willing to take risks, but they still followed basic military logic. Admiral Stone was different. She was insane. Lisa raised an eyebrow. Insane how? She made decisions that no rational being would make, Zex explained. When our fleet arrived at Luna, we expected the humans to try to defend their moon base. Instead, Stone ordered her entire fleet to attack us. Zex began pacing again, his forearms moving as he spoke. You must understand, our fleet was 10 times larger than hers. We had better weapons, stronger shields, more experienced crews. Stone had maybe 30 ships, most of them converted cargo vessels and mining platforms. By every rule of warfare, she should have tried to hide behind the moon's defenses and hope for rescue. But she didn't, Lisa said. No, Zex confirmed. She broadcast a message to our entire fleet. I was on the bridge of our flagship when we received it. Stone appeared on our screens and she was smiling. She said, "Welcome to Luna, boys. Hope you brought your dancing shoes because we're about to show you how humans party." The alien stopped pacing and looked directly at Lisa. We did not understand what she meant by party or dancing shoes. Our translators could not explain these references, but something about the way she said it made our crews nervous. Lisa made notes on her tablet. Admiral Stone had become a hero to humanity, but hearing about her from the enemy's perspective made her seem even more impressive. What happened next? Stone did something that violated every principle of space combat, Zek said. She split her small fleet into groups of 3 or 4 ships and sent them in different directions. This should have made them easy targets for our weapons. Divided forces are weak forces. He sat back down, his breathing becoming more rapid. But Stone had turned the moon itself into a weapon. The humans had been preparing for this battle for months. They had moved mining equipment to the lunar surface and turned it into the largest gun platform in the solar system. Lisa looked up from her notes. Mining equipment? Mass drivers, Zex explained. Machines designed to launch rocks into space for mining operations. But Stone's people had modified them to launch anything. When our ships moved into attack position, the moon started shooting at us. The alien scales darkened further. But these were not normal projectiles. The humans had filled containers with their own industrial waste, construction debris, even old furniture. They were literally throwing garbage at our ships. Lisa tried not to smile. Did it work? It worked perfectly, Zek said, sounding frustrated, even 3 years later. Our shields were designed to stop energy weapons and military projectiles. They were not designed to handle thousands of pieces of random junk traveling at incredible speeds. A kitchen table moving at 50,000 kilometers per hour can destroy a warship. He stood up again and walked to the window. While we were dealing with the garbage bombardment, Stone's ship groups attacked us from multiple directions. They used the confusion to get close to our largest ships. Zex pressed his hands against the window. This is when we learned that humans had been studying our technology more carefully than we realized. Stone's ships were equipped with weapons that should not have existed. Human engineers had somehow combined our own captured technology with their industrial equipment to create new types of weapons. Lisa made more notes. What kind of weapons? Mining lasers powered by fusion reactors, Zex said. Industrial cutters that could slice through our hull armor like it was paper. Construction robots reprogrammed to plant explosives on our ships. The humans had turned their entire civilization into a weapons factory. The alien turned back to face her. But the worst part was the humans themselves. Stone's crews fought like they were having the time of their lives. They were laughing over the radio channels, making jokes while they destroyed our ships, celebrating each kill like it was a victory in some kind of sport. Zex sat down heavily in his chair. I watched from our flagship as a converted human cargo ship rammed one of our dreadnoughts. The cargo ship was completely destroyed, but just before impact we heard the human crew singing. They were singing while they died. Lisa felt chills running down her spine. What were they singing? An old human song, Zex said. Something about flying high and never coming down. Our cultural specialists later told us it was a song about freedom and defiance. The humans chose to die singing about freedom rather than live as prisoners. The room fell silent for a moment. Lisa tried to imagine the scene Zex was describing. Human crews singing as they flew their ships into certain death, treating their final moments like some kind of celebration. The battle lasted 8 hours, Zex continued. By the end, we had lost over half our fleet. Stone had lost almost all of her ships, but she had achieved something impossible. She had defeated a force 10 times larger than her own. Lisa looked up from her tablet. How many humans died? Fewer than we expected, Zex said. Stone had somehow managed to evacuate most of her crews to the moon base before the final attacks. The humans who died were volunteers who had chosen to stay behind and pilot the suicide ships. He paused, his scales shifting to an even darker shade. But that was not the end of the battle. When our remaining ships tried to retreat, Stone appeared, on our communications again. She was still alive, broadcasting from the moon base. Lisa waited for him to continue. She made us an offer, Zex said. She said we could leave peacefully, or she could show us what Luna Base's real defenses looked like. She gave us 10 minutes to decide. What did your commander choose? He chose to attack the moon base, Zex said. Our pride had been hurt. We could not accept defeat from such a small human force, so we fired everything we had at the lunar surface. The alien's voice became very quiet. Stone let us fire for 5 minutes. Our weapons hit the moon base and destroyed most of the surface installations. We thought we had won. Then Stone came back on the radio one more time. Lisa leaned forward. What did she say? She said, "Thanks for the light show. Now let me show you ours." Zex's hands were shaking slightly. The entire moon lit up like a star. The humans had somehow turned their nuclear reactors into weapons. The explosion was visible from Earth. Lisa's eyes widened. They destroyed their own base? No, Zex said. That was the terrifying part. They had used the nuclear explosion as a weapon against us. The electromagnetic pulse disabled every ship we had left. The radiation cloud made it impossible for us to approach the moon for weeks. He looked directly at Lisa. When the radiation finally cleared, we found that the moon base was still there. The humans had built it deep underground, protected by layers of rock and metal. They had used their own surface installations as bait, then turned their power source into a weapon that crippled our entire remaining fleet. The alien stood up and walked back to the window. Admiral Stone broadcast one final message to us. She said, "Earth is closed to visitors. Don't come back unless you want to talk, instead of fight." Lisa made her final notes for this section. What did your fleet do? We limped home, Zex said. What was left of the greatest fleet in Catherian history barely made it back to our territory. The Battle of Luna had ended any hope of conquering Earth through military force. He turned back, to her. But more importantly, it had shown the entire galaxy that humans could not be defeated by conventional warfare. Stone had taken an impossible situation and turned it into a victory that would be remembered forever. The alien sat back down, his scales now showing exhaustion. After Luna, everything changed. The war continued, but we were no longer trying to conquer humanity. We were trying to survive contact with them. Lisa could see that Zex was getting tired. His scales had remained dark for the past hour, and his movements were becoming slower. But she needed to hear the rest of the story. The war had continued for another year after the Battle of Luna, and something had changed during that time. Something that had led to this interview on a neutral space station. After Luna, our military leaders held emergency meetings for weeks, Zex said, settling back into his chair. The defeat had shocked everyone. No one could understand how Admiral Stone had turned certain death into victory. Our best strategist studied the battle recordings over and over, trying to figure out what we had missed. He paused and looked at Lisa. Do you know what they concluded? Lisa shook her head. They concluded that humans were impossible, Zex said. Not difficult to fight, not challenging opponents. Impossible. The battle had violated every law of warfare that we knew. Stone had done things that should not have worked, and somehow they worked perfectly. The alien stood up and began his familiar pacing. But the High Command was not ready to give up. They decided that if direct assault would not work, we would try a different approach. Economic warfare, blockades, cutting off human supply lines and forcing you to surrender through starvation. Lisa made notes on her tablet. Did it work? For about 3 months, Zex said. We surrounded every human colony and stopped all trade, ships from reaching them. Our computers calculated that human food reserves would run out within 6 months. We waited for the surrender offers to begin. He stopped pacing and looked directly at her. Instead, human colonies began attacking our blockade fleets. Lisa looked up from her notes. How? If they were cut off from supplies? They built new ships, Zex said, his voice filled with frustration. Using materials that should not have been suitable for space travel. On Darwin Colony, humans created a fleet of fighters using farm equipment and mining tools. On New Geneva, they turned their water treatment plants into rocket engines. The alien sat back down, his 4 hands clasped together. But the most disturbing incident happened at Riverside Station. The humans there had no military equipment at all. They were researchers and teachers, studying alien plant life. When we blockaded their station, they should have been helpless. Lisa waited for him to continue. Instead, they turned their research into weapons, Zex said. The station leader, a woman named Katie Webb, had been studying how different plants grew in various environments. She used this knowledge to create biological weapons that attacked our ship systems. Zex's scales darkened further. Webb somehow developed organisms that could eat through our hull metal. She loaded these organisms into containers and launched them at our ships using makeshift catapults. Within days, our entire blockade fleet was falling apart as the organisms consumed our ships from the inside. Lisa tried to picture a research station fighting off a fleet of warships using modified plants. What did Webb do before the war? She was a kindergarten teacher, Zex said. Before becoming a researcher, she taught human children ages 5 and 6. She had no military training, no weapons experience, no knowledge of space combat. But when we threatened her station, she became one of the most effective military commanders we ever faced. The alien stood up again and walked to the wall. This was when our leaders began to understand the real problem. Every human could become a soldier. Every human could become a weapon. Your entire species seemed to have been designed for war, even the ones who had never fought before. Lisa made more notes. Is that when your people started to get scared? Scared is too simple a word, Zex said. We were terrified, not just of human weapons or tactics, but of what humans represented. Every other species in the galaxy has natural limits. They fight to survive, but they also know when to give up. Humans seem to have no limits at all. He turned back to face her. Let me tell you about the Titan incident. That was when we realized we were not just fighting another species. We were fighting something completely new. Zex returned to his chair, but he did not sit down. Titan Station was a human research facility orbiting Saturn. When we attacked it, we expected easy victory. The station had no weapons, no shields, no military defenses. Just scientists studying your solar system. Lisa looked up from her tablet. What happened? The station commander was a man named Ryan Butler, Zex said. He had been a cargo ship captain before taking the research job. When our battle group arrived, Butler sent us a message. He said he wanted to negotiate. The alien's scales shifted to a lighter shade, showing what Lisa had learned was confusion. Butler offered to surrender the station in exchange for safe passage for his people. This seemed reasonable. We agreed to his terms. Lisa sensed there was more to the story. But Butler asked for 1 hour to prepare his people for evacuation, Zex said. We thought this was normal. Humans always seem to need time to gather their possessions before surrendering. We waited. He sat down finally, his breathing becoming more rapid. After exactly 1 hour, Butler contacted us again. He said his people were ready to leave, but he had a small gift for us first. He said it was a human tradition to give gifts to visitors. Lisa made notes, wondering where this story was going. Butler ejected what looked like a cargo container from his station. Zex continued. It was heading toward our flagship. Our sensors showed it contained no weapons, no explosives, nothing dangerous. Just some kind of mechanical device. The alien paused, his hands shaking slightly. When the container reached our ship, it attached itself to our hull. Butler came on the radio again. He was laughing. He said, "Hope you boys like surprises." Lisa waited for him to continue. The container began broadcasting a signal, Zex said. Within minutes, every system on our flagship started malfunctioning. Our weapons went offline, our engines stopped working, our life support began failing. He looked directly at Lisa. Butler had somehow created a device that could take control of our ship's computer systems. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was what he did next. Lisa leaned forward. What did he do? He took control of our entire battle group, Zex said. Every ship in our fleet stopped responding to commands from their crews. Butler was controlling all of them from his research station. The alien's voice became very quiet. Then Butler made us another offer. He said he would give us back control of our ships if we agreed to leave human space and never return. If we refused, he would fly our ships into Saturn and kill everyone aboard. Lisa felt chills running down her spine. How did he gain control of your ships? We still do not know exactly how, Zex admitted. Our technical specialists studied the device for months. Butler had somehow combined human-computer technology with alien systems he had never seen before. He had created something that should have been impossible. He stood up and walked back to the window. But here is the part that haunts me most. When we asked Butler how he had done it, he said it was easy. He said humans had been hacking computer systems for fun since before they reached space. Taking control of our ships was just another puzzle to solve. Lisa made more notes. Did your fleet leave? We had no choice, Zex said. Butler demonstrated his control by making one of our destroyers do a complete loop around Saturn. He could have destroyed our entire battle group, but he chose to let us go. He said killing us would be too easy and humans preferred fair fights. The alien turned back to her. As we were leaving, Butler sent us one final message. He said to tell our leaders that humans were just getting started. He said the real war would begin when humans started visiting alien worlds. Lisa looked up from her tablet. What did he mean? We found out 6 months later, Zex said, his scales turning almost black again. Human ships began appearing in our territory. Not invasion fleets, single ships, sometimes just 2 or 3 together. They would arrive at our colonies, scan everything, and leave before we could respond. He sat back down, his exhaustion showing clearly now. The humans were studying us the same way we had studied them, learning about our technology, our defenses, our weaknesses, but they were doing it much faster than we had. Lisa made her final notes for this section. Were they planning to invade your territory? That was what we thought at first. Zex said. We prepared for massive human attacks on our home worlds. We moved our fleets into defensive positions and waited for the invasion. He looked directly at her. But the invasion never came. Instead, something much worse happened. The humans started talking to us. Lisa could see that Zex was reaching the end of his story. His scales had been shifting between different shades throughout their conversation, but now they seemed to have settled into a pattern she had not seen before. Not quite dark with fear, not quite light with comfort, but something in between, something that looked almost like hope. The humans started talking to us, Zex repeated, settling back into his chair for what Lisa sensed would be the final time. Not through official diplomatic channels, not through military communications. They just showed up at our colonies and started conversations. He looked directly at Lisa. The first contact happened at Kepler Station, one of our mining operations near the edge of our territory. A single human ship appeared and requested permission to dock. Our station commander was so surprised that he actually said yes. Lisa made notes on her tablet. What did the humans want? They wanted to trade, Zex said. The human captain, a woman named Ellen Price, brought samples of human technology and offered to exchange them for examples of our equipment. She said she was curious about how our mining tools worked. The alien's scales shifted to a lighter shade. This made no sense to our people. Why would humans want our mining equipment when they had been destroying our military hardware for 3 years? But Price seemed genuinely interested in peaceful trade. Lisa looked up from her notes. Was it a trick? That was what our security forces thought, Zex said. They believed Price was a spy gathering information for future attacks. But Price did something that confused everyone. She gave us detailed plans for several human technologies before we gave her anything in return. He stood up and walked to the window one more time. Price handed over the specifications for human fusion, reactors, agricultural systems, and medical equipment. She said it was a sign of good faith. She wanted us to know that humans were serious about peaceful contact. Lisa tried to understand what she was hearing. After 3 years of war, humans were trying to make peace? Some humans were, Zex said, but not the way other species make peace. Price explained that humans had studied our culture and learned something important about us. She said humans understood why we had started the war. The alien turned back to face her. Price told our station commander that humans knew we had attacked because we were afraid. She said humans had the same problem with fear, but they dealt with it differently. Lisa waited for him to continue. According to Price, when humans are afraid of something, they try to understand it, Zex said. When we are afraid of something, we try to destroy it. Price said that both approaches had advantages, but only one approach could lead to long-term peace. He sat back down, his movements slower than before. Price spent 3 days at Kepler Station. She studied our mining equipment, but she also spent time talking to our workers. She learned our language, tasted our food, and asked questions about our families and culture. Lisa made more notes. How did your people react to that? They were confused, Zex admitted. No one had ever shown that kind of interest in ordinary Cytherian life before. Even our own leaders rarely talked to regular workers. But this human woman seemed genuinely curious about how we lived and what we cared about. The alien's scales brightened slightly. When Price left Kepler Station, she invited our station commander to visit a human colony. She said she wanted to show him how humans lived when they were not fighting wars. Lisa looked up from her tablet. Did he go? Eventually, Zex said. It took 6 months, but Commander Vectal finally accepted Price's invitation. He traveled to New Boston, a human agricultural colony that had been rebuilt after our attacks. Zex paused, his breathing becoming steadier. Vectal expected to find a military fortress. Instead, he found farms, schools, and families. The humans there treated him like an honored guest. They showed him their crops, their children, their art, their music. The alien looked directly at Lisa. This was when Vectal realized something important. Humans had not been fighting us because they loved war. They had been fighting us because they loved peace. Lisa set down her tablet. What do you mean? Humans fight wars to protect the things they care about, Zex explained. Your families, your homes, your way of life. When we attacked human colonies, we were not just threatening human territory. We were threatening everything that made humans happy. He stood up again, but this time he seemed more relaxed. Vectal learned that the same humans who had fought so fiercely against our armies were gentle with their children, kind to their elderly, and generous with their friends. The warriors we had feared were also teachers, farmers, artists, and parents. Lisa made more notes. Is that when the peace talks began? Not officially, Zek said. But word spread among our people about what Vectal had seen. Other commanders began accepting human invitations to visit colonies. Humans visited more of our stations. Slowly, both sides began to understand each other. The alien walked to the center of the room. The real change came when humans started helping us solve problems that had nothing to do with the war. Human engineers helped repair mining equipment at our remote stations. Human doctors shared medical techniques that saved Catherian lives. Human teachers worked with our children to develop better educational methods. Lisa looked up from her notes. Why would humans help their enemies? Because humans had realized something that we had not, Zek said. The war was making both sides weaker. Every ship we destroyed, every colony we damaged, every life we lost on both sides made the galaxy a more dangerous place for everyone. He sat back down, his scales now showing a definite lighter shade. Humans understood that the only way to end the fear was to prove that cooperation was better than conflict. They showed us that two species working together could accomplish more than either species could accomplish alone. Lisa made her final notes. Is that why you agreed to this interview? Partly, Zek said, but also because I wanted to explain something that many humans might not understand. Your species frightens us, but not in the way you might think. He looked directly at her. Humans are terrifying because you are impossible to predict. You take situations that should end in disaster and somehow turn them into victories. You face overwhelming odds with confidence and joy. You treat every challenge as an opportunity to become stronger. The alien paused, choosing his words carefully. But humans are also terrifying because you are capable of incredible kindness. The same species that destroyed our fleets also offered to share technology that could improve our lives. The same people who fought us to the death also invited us to their homes for dinner. Lisa set down her tablet completely. What happens now? Now we learn, Zek said. Both species have things to teach each other. Humans can show us how to face challenges with courage and creativity. We can show humans how to build stable, peaceful societies that last for thousands of years. He stood up and walked to the window one final time. The war is ending, human Lisa Martinez. Not because one side defeated the other, but because both sides realized that we are stronger together than apart. The alien turned back to her. This interview will be broadcast across human space. I hope your people will understand that we no longer see you as enemies. We see you as partners in building a better galaxy. Lisa stood up and gathered her recording equipment. What will you do when this interview is finished? I will return to my people and help them prepare for the future, Zek said. A future where Catherian children and human children can play together without fear. Where our species can explore the stars together instead of fighting over them. He walked to the door, then paused and looked back at her. And perhaps, if we are very fortunate, humans can teach us how to laugh while we face the unknown. Your species has shown us that even the most difficult challenges can be enjoyable if you approach them with the right attitude. The door slid open with a soft hiss. As Zex walked through it, Lisa heard him say something in his own language that the translator did not catch. It sounded almost like singing. Lisa sat alone in the small white room for several minutes, organizing her notes and thinking about everything she had heard. In 3 hours of conversation, an alien soldier had revealed more about humanity than most humans understood about themselves. Humans were not just another species struggling to survive in a hostile galaxy. They were something new. Something unexpected, something that could change the balance of power among the stars. But more importantly, they were something that could bring different species together instead of driving them apart. The war was ending, but the real adventure was just beginning. And for the first time in 3 years, Lisa felt genuinely excited about what the future might hold.